way of preserving the assets. That's correct. Yeah?
Yeah, that's correct.
It was, and it was granted by the court.
That's correct.
This was before the Commission of Inquiry came into being.
That's correct.
And the Commission would have been aware of the High Court order.
I assume so.
It was not put to them by the ministry, the High Court order. So that is a fundamental thing that they should have.
The High Court order was a matter of public knowledge, so I don't recall the ministry ever putting it specifically to the Commission. It was a matter of public knowledge. Not only was there a High Court order, but I had held a press conference after the order to announce the order to the public.
Just please just say that last part about the public.
I said not only was the freezing order public, but I convened a press conference after the order to announce it to the public.
Yes, but yet still, certain institutions did not get the memo, did not get the information, and those are institutions within government.
Yeah, but Council, I mean, we need to be careful when you say that, because you yourself told me, because you were duty bound, you said that Gilma did receive communication from the Ministry of Agriculture.
I don't wish to open up that.
Yeah, I know, but
again.
But when you say certain government department didn't get it, you can question the timeliness of the information, but not the actual fact that the information was received.
Well, in fact, the government department did not get it. The department responsible for wildlife did not get the memo at all.
Okay.
And perhaps the one you're referring to, Gilma, they got it, but they got it late. And, well, not late. Let me withdraw that. I would withdraw that. They got it. It was not as timely as it should have been, perhaps, but they still received the information, and they asked for more clarification, and they also stated that they don't have the capacity to do what they're being asked to do.
The order was end of May. They got it in June. We have not yet established when in June.
Well, it is the 4th of June.
Council, that's information that is critical for the record here. The order was issued on the 22nd of May. If you work the number of working days between 22nd of May and 31st of May, that's a relatively short time for communications between ministries and their departments in government.
I would agree with you. However, the first day we converged here, we spoke about the environment at the time, and there was speed and all those, there was urgency. So for that, and also the assets we're talking about here are assets that are not static. They're livestock.
Yes.
They can easily be moved around. They can easily be rigged with disease. They could easily be slaughtered by one major, you know, as they were. So there was urgency needed.
Yes, and the urgency was before the order. Since the order, the army was securing the locations where these livestock were. But as far as I knew.
From the evidence we've received here, although not in an explicit manner, the evidence goes to suggest that the army had taken control from when the government sat, even before any conception of a commission was sought.
Yes, that's my understanding
Talk
as
less
well.
of the application.
Absolutely, that's my understanding as well.
So the army had control from when the government was seated. But you see, the army was not referenced in the order. I don't wish to go back to the order.
Yeah, I know, because, well, the deductions from your theory is that because there was a delay in communicating the order, therefore there was potential loss of livestock as a result of that delay. Now, that's not necessarily the case, because the army, as far as we knew, was already securing the locations where these cattle were.
At the behest of who?
I don't know, because you see,
Then the properties then weren't secured, were they?
Sorry?
The properties then weren't secured.
But the government had no obligation to secure. They were private properties up to that point.
Then why were the army there or private?
Well, maybe you should ask the one who put the army there in the first place.
Then perhaps what we can say is that the government had not taken control of the assets yet.
As at that time,
So
yes.
nobody was accountable per se.
Exactly.
So when from on the 22nd day of May is when the government started to be accountable for.
That's right.
For the yes. And
That's right. That's when the order was issued.
and that order was a preservatory order for the assets.
Yep.
And in fact, the attachment to your affidavit to the court, which attachment was endorsed by the court and attached in its own order, is the same attachment on the legal notice.
Mhm.
Is that news to you? Or?
I'm not sure.
I could provide you both.
You know, Counsel, you're getting into, again, the operational details. And at that time, I will say again,
That's fine.
and I'll say it for the 1,000th time, I did not have time to look after livestock in view of the situation in this country. What is the Minister of Justice doing following livestock? Especially at the moment when there was chaos. And we were preoccupied with other more important matters of state, security, stability, peace. Those were the pressing issues. So really, the cows and the goats and sheep were not on my priority list. I keep repeating this.
All right. So I can appreciate your perspective. The livestock were still assets, and once the government declared them as assets by virtue of going to the court, there was need for the government to secure them.
And that's why we identified the government department that we thought was best suited to take charge of the livestock, which was Gilma.
Yes, the agency.
Yes.
Very well. However, they did not get that memo.
You just said that they received information from their ministry on the 4th of June.
Yes.
But you don't know when the Ministry of Justice wrote to the Minister of Agriculture.
That evidence is not before us. And that's perhaps where
Yes.
you can help us enlighten.
Well, I wouldn't write. I wouldn't be the one who would write the letter from the, like I said, government communicates at certain levels.
Yes.
It would be from the Solicitor General to the permanent secretary of the Minister of Agriculture. Now, I don't know when that letter was written. I wouldn't even be interested at that time to know. For me, once the issue has been decided to inform, it will be done. So I wouldn't follow on like I said, it was not high on my priority list.
All right, that's fine. I don't wish to belabor on this point anyway. I just you've given me my answer that the assets were preserved.
I just intervened because you said some government departments were not informed, and most of our discussion centered around Gilma, not wildlife. So that's why I said, you yourself told me, you felt duty bound to tell me that Gilma did receive communication from the Agriculture Ministry.
Indeed.
And this is after I had insisted that if there were going to be communications, it would have been between the ministries, because Gilma is, Agriculture Ministry is the line ministry for Gilma. You've just confirmed to me that they received it on the 4th of June.
Yes, we have evidence that.
Yes, the order was issued on the 22nd of May.
Yes.
If you count the number of working days between the 22nd and 31st, that's a short time, relatively speaking. Now,
I understand. Contextualize it.
No, but the urgency came before the need to act quickly, etc., for the government to take charge. Once the government took charge, that's why I went and issued a press conference. At that point, we were giving notice to the public that these acts have been taken so that those who were thinking of interfering with the assets would now know that there is an order preventing people from interfering with the assets.
So that's the de jure aspect of it. What about the de facto aspect of it?
Now, we knew that Gilma would be challenged. Gilma did inform, as far as I was informed, that they had challenges. But you see, the idea of handing over to Gilma was not for Gilma to physically go and take over the cattle. We already knew that the army was there already. It was for Gilma to take stock and to be administratively responsible for the livestock. We knew Gilma didn't have the capacity. These were in the hundreds, these livestock. And that's why I guess the army was in control at that time.
All right. I wish to move on from this point. We have deliberated over it enough. But I would want to state that the livestock were quite valuable. In fact, they were the most messy. The process of selling the livestock was the most messy process the commission had in its disposal of assets. Yet still, it raked in about 8.4 million, and if it was done properly, it could have raked in double or even triple, who knows, more that amount. So just to state that the livestock were indeed valuable.
You know, I'm not pretending that the livestock were not valuable at all. I'm just saying, as far as the Justice Ministry was concerned, as at that time, it was not high on my list of priorities. That's because there were several other more pressing matters, including the conducive environment to even preserve that livestock. It was a very tense period in the country at the time.
Okay, that's fine. Let's speak of the lifetime of the commission. How did you envision your working relationship with the commission once they had begun? And when I say your, I mean the government. The government's working relationship with the commission. How does the government communicate with the commission administratively? How does the government also approach the commission if it's interested in one or more of the subject matter that the commission is abreast with?
Ordinarily, that would be done through the Ministry of Justice. And as far as the ministry itself was concerned, again, at the risk of repeating myself, I had the approach of a production line. There were a lot of activities lined up in our transitional justice process. So when a commission was set up and they start their activities, I adopt a hands-off approach and start to focus on the next bit of activity in the other commissions. So we adopted at the ministry, at least I can speak for myself, we adopted a hands-on, hands-off approach. Hands-on approach to make sure that everything was put in place, and once they kick off, we adopt a hands-off approach and not get involved again unless a specific matter is brought to our attention for our intervention. That's when we would indeed get involved again. But otherwise, we adopted a hands-off approach. Now, as for the rest of government, I don't know. You know, government is a huge beast. It's not just the Ministry of Justice. Government departments are many, several. And I don't know what the relationship in terms of communications was between the commission and other government departments, but certainly the proper and usual thing was through the Ministry of Justice.
If it would arise that the government needed one or two of the assets, how would the government approach the commission in that instance? I ask it again because what you answered is administrative.
Maybe we should evolve from theory to practice, and I will cite an example, the first and perhaps only example that I have.
So perhaps just let's indulge me on the theory for now.
Yes.
I promise you I would not go more than two more questions until we get to the practical.
Well, because the answer right at the start, and then with time things evolve and settle to a pattern. And so that's why the theory does not specifically address the issues that you may have in mind. That's why I wanted us to take concrete examples. Things did happen at the beginning, but then with time, things evolve and settle to a pattern.
Feel free.
Okay. If you were specifically referring to the request by the government for the tractors not to be sold, would that be an example of what you have in mind? Yes, so there was early in the days after the commission was set up, when the government became aware, I believe it was the Ministry of Agriculture that became aware that the commission was about to dispose of certain tractors. And the Minister of Agriculture, I recall in cabinet, did float the idea that maybe perhaps the commission should defer the sale of those tractors until the government decides what to do with them. What he had in mind, I recall, in the discussions was he wanted to distribute those tractors to some of the farming communities across the country in view of the approaching rainy season. And so the issue was discussed in cabinet, and it was resolved that the Office of Secretary General will write to the Commission to request for a deferment of the sale of the tractors until the government decides what to do, and then the Commission will be contacted thereafter regarding that. And I believe that was done. A letter was written by the Office of Secretary General addressed to the Commission.
Okay, so in essence, the communication will be through the Ministry of Justice and for a letter to for administrative tools to be exchanged.
For the Ministry of Justice would be the usual channel of communication for administrative matters, but the matter that I'm talking about here is a substantive request by the government.
And how would the government then approach it? By through a letter?
Yes, the Secretary, that's why I explained, the Secretary General had written to the Commission to request for the Commission to defer the sales of the tractors.
What would you call that?
A request?
A request.
Yes.
And was it intended to be a request?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I made sure.
We will get to that.
Okay. I made sure in cabinet that because I recall the discussions in cabinet. You see, some of these things are as a result of people's lack of understanding of certain processes and procedures. The idea was to tell the Commission, and if the minutes reflect the discussions accurately, they would reveal that I said we can't interfere in the work of the Commission, but we can request certainly. That was clearly stated.
And was it clearly stated to Cabinet that if the request was declined or not heeded to, then Cabinet would have to leave the Commission alone?
But that's what happened. The request was not heeded to, and the Commission carried out its activities notwithstanding.
Is that what happened?
But that's what happened.
Okay, let's look into that. I was not in a hurry to get to that, but let's look at that and before we look at it in specific, let's look at your discussions in Cabinet. How did Cabinet understand the selling of assets by the Commission?
I don't understand the question.
Did Cabinet appreciate the fact that the Commission could sell assets, or did it hold the contrary view?
Well, there were discussions in Cabinet about whether the Commission could sell the assets.
Please enlighten the Commission.
There were discussions.
The nature of the discussion.
Well, there were some who questioned whether the Commission had the power to do so, and there were some who were of the view that they did.
So that was a question of law.
Indeed.
Did the Ministry of Justice or yourself, did you weigh in on the conversation?
Absolutely.
Please enlighten the Commission.
It was my view that the Commission had the power to take interim measures, including but not limited to the power to dispose of assets that were at the risk of perishing.
And was there a conclusion made on that Cabinet discussion?
It didn't matter what Cabinet discussed or decided. The Commission was acting irrespective of what Cabinet thought. They were acting independently.
Sure, but was there a conclusion on that?
In Cabinet?
Yes.
But a conclusion to say what?
To say that the commission can sell or not?
No, I mean, that wouldn't be a cabinet conclusion because that's a legal matter. It was just in the context of discussions in cabinet about whether the commission could or could not dispose of any assets at interim.
It is evidence received by the committee that it was cabinet's position that the commission could not sell assets.
There were discussions, certainly, but cabinet could not conclude one way or the other on something that is not within their powers. The commission was acting irrespective of what cabinet thought. So the conclusion would pretty much serve no useful purpose. But it was my position as Attorney General that the commission had the power to take interim measures, including the power to dispose of assets at risk of perishing.
Okay, let's look at that. There was already a preservatory mechanism put in place by your esteemed office, by the government through your esteemed office. That was the High Court order, and that preserved the assets as far as you're concerned, correct? Those assets were identified by the bulk of those assets were identified by your team through the Registrar General. Of course, the office of the IGP also assisted heavily in the case of the vehicle, and a list was prepared. When you went to court, the court gave the Registrar General custody of all movable and immovable assets. Now, we understand from our deliberations early on that would exclude all the other assets that were assigned to specific authorities, such as the wildlife, the livestock, and the shares to companies. But it would include every other asset that the order was silent on, such as the land, such as...
the order was not silent
vehicles.
on the land. The order included the lands because a lot of the lands were in the name of companies that were also the subject of a freezing order.
Okay. But a lot of the lands were also not.
Yes, that's why we had the default position of the Registrar General. Yes.
And because of that default position, he was the person responsible to take control of the vehicles.
Which vehicles?
The vehicles invented by the task force.
But you see, if you recall my evidence on the vehicles and the advice that I had given to the late Secretary General at the time, that the vehicles that were found on state property are assumed to be property or are assumed to be state property until the contrary is proved.
Yes. Is there a point?
Yes, the point is I don't know which vehicles you were assuming were part of the freezing order.
The vehicles that were part of an inventory list compiled by the task force led by the Ministry of Justice.
Yes, but the freezing order had attachment. The task force inventorized the properties, but the freezing order was clear about the attachments that were part of the freezing order, which is why when we obtained a supplementary list of properties, we went again in July to also freeze those additional properties.
So what you're saying is that the vehicles were not part of the responsibility of the Registrar General?
Yes, we didn't seek to freeze those vehicles.
Okay, fair enough. So back to the sale, the interference or lack thereof by the government. The commission decided that it would sell vehicles,
Tractors.
mostly yes, they are vehicles, mostly tractors. They were vehicles that were not tractors, although they were not civilian vehicles in a sense.
Okay.
But they were construction vehicles that were sold with the tractors.
As at that time, I wasn't aware of that. I was aware of the tractors certainly, but maybe that's because the agriculture minister raised the issue of the tractors in cabinet.
That's fine. So when that issue, when the sales began, the secretary to the commission was sorry, I'm just thinking whether I want to dive into that issue at this minute. But yes, the secretary to the commission was conducting the sales, was supervising the sales at the court workshop, when a phone call was received by him. It's the evidence from Mr. Yahya Jammeh, and he explains that he was asked to he was informed that an order should be conveyed to him. Instructions should be conveyed to him.
He was told by whom?
I'm getting to that. He was told by the secretary to cabinet at the time, one Mr. Ibrahim Assisi, that he was instructed by his superior, the Secretary General, one Habib Drame, that cabinet has decided that the sale of tractors should be suspended, and he should suspend it right away. I believe he informed Mr. Cisse that he could not do that because he's not answerable to Mr. Cisse, and he's only answerable to the commissioners. And Mr. Kurang explains that he was not at the site at the time, so he continued his journey to proceed to the site. And when he got to the site, he met a gentleman who was accompanied by his orderly, and the orderly seemed to be searching around for him, and found him and asked whether he was Mr. Kurang, and took him to his principal, who then reiterated the same thing, and Mr. Kurang stood by the same position that he took over the phone. Now, this was the beginning of the end for Mr. Kurang from that moment. I know, and I'll allow you to weigh in. But before we focus on Mr. Kurang, I would like to focus on the activity, the interference.
The interference?
Yes. Mentioned instructions. And on the site as well, he was told to shut things down, in fact, and it would not hold. So I do call it interference, but please feel free to comment on that.
What is Mr. Cisse's version of events?
Heavily dared by this honorable committee.
Okay.
So we hear from all parties. Mr. Cisse's version, paraphrasing, if I can recall well, was that when he arrived at the MSA...
How about the phone call first? Did he confirm the words chosen by...
In fact, he initially said that he could not reach Kurang on the phone, and he went to MSA and that's where he got in contact with Kurang. But after a few minutes of a push and pull between myself and Mr. Cisse, we established that indeed he got Mr. Kurang.
He could have forgotten and he remembered following your exchanges. You read too much into these things, Councillor. Eh?
I don't. I'm just saying the facts. I believe you're the one reading too much into it. I did not insinuate anything. But yes, after push and pull, I jogged his memory.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you want me to put it. I jogged his memory, and he was able to remember the phone call. I don't believe Mr. Cisse gave us the content of the phone call or what occurred when the phone call was made. But what he was explicit about was that when he arrived at MSA, he sat in his car and asked his orderly to look for Mr. Kurang. And Mr. Kurang eventually found him, and they had words, and he left.
Did he reveal the contents of that exchange?
Well,
Because you were making a specific allegation that Mr. Kuang made against Mr. Sise.
yes.
I would like to know what Mr. Sise's
If I
specific
recall,
response was.
if I recall well, perhaps if I can ask the IT team to prepare footage of that specific
No.
testimony between
Just from your
myself
recollection,
and
really. Yeah.
myself and Mr. Sise. But if I recall well, Mr. Sise, in fact, was of the view that they were instructions.
Okay, that he had received instructions.
Yes.
Okay. So what would be your question to me about that?
You can react to it first before I pose the question.
I don't have any reaction to that. All I can tell you is the exchanges in cabinet, the different positions, and my position, and my advice that a request be made to the commission to defer the sale of the tractors. Now I don't know how that request was conveyed. I would be happy to see a copy of that request if you have it here, but that was my advice.
In fact, I don't believe we have a copy of that request. Actually, we don't have. Let me actually state that we don't have a copy of that request. We have mountains of evidence. It is not part of the evidence. However, we do have viva voce evidence from Mr. Sise stating that that cabinet decided that the Minister of Justice, yourself, would be the one to go to the commissioners since this activity was impending. When cabinet held its last session on this matter, the sales had already started. They had already begun. And it was for the Minister of Justice to speak, to make the request and report back immediately. I don't believe cabinet envisioned that the ministry would write. From Mr. Sise's evidence, although he did not state so, I must say, but this is my deduction of his evidence, that it was for the Minister of Justice to approach the commissioners, speak to them, and report back. And the minister did speak to them and report back, from Mr. Sise's recollection. But please go ahead.
Well, you have given me Mr. Sise's evidence that I spoke to the commission and went back to cabinet. Maybe you should ask the commission if I ever spoke with them about this.
We actually will. And right now we are asking your humble self.
Well, because it is said that I spoke to the commission.
Did you speak to the commission?
You see, so
on this
the
issue?
commission is in a better position than I am to either confirm or deny that.
True. Did you speak to the commission on this issue? Or the commission as well?
I don't recall, and I have said this many times, ever attempting to interfere in the work of the commission. And the reason why in cabinet I was of the view that they can only request and not tell the commission because the commission was functioning. hours until changed by rational factors. End of letter.
Thank you. Do you think, looking at these two letters, in fact, before I ask the question, you can turn on to the next page as well. Is that folio 44?
Yes.
The 3rd of July 2018?
Yes, 3rd of July 2018.
Okay, let's just do the same for that letter.
You want me to go through the letter as well?
And also, I know this one's a bit lengthy, but just the genesis of it. But just to point out a fact here, you see, had a TOR been devised, the Honorable Chair, the Doyen, would not be administering letters.
The letter was addressed to the chairman. The letter from the office of the president.
Yes.
And it was for the chairman to respond to that
And
letter.
the chairman has a secretary.
But he signs it in his name because it was addressed to him as chairman.
Okay, fair enough. I would not belabor on it. It's just something I wanted to point out.
You're pointing out the terms of reference still.
Yes.
Okay.
It will haunt us
I am sure.
until Friday.
Let me add something as well here.
Yes.
I am absolutely sure that the chairman did not type out this letter. Because I know that the chairman
He actually mentioned,
cannot type.
he mentioned that, yes.
Yes, so whether if there was a terms of reference, it would have come from the secretary. I'm sure someone typed this letter for him. It could have been typed under the instructions of the secretary, for all you know.
Sure. Let's go to the letter. And this time around, your copy.
Okay. You want me to read?
Yes, please.
The letter from the office of the president dated 3rd of July 2018, addressed to the chairman of the Jammeh Commission and coming from Mr. Ilojalo for Secretary General. Same heading. With reference to your letter dated 2nd July 2018, copied to this office on the subject caption above, I have the honor to bring to the attention of the Commission that it was a cabinet decision in the meeting held on Thursday, 21st June 2018, to crave the indulgence of the Commission of Inquiry to suspend the auctioning of the former president's tractors by the Commission, given the concerns raised by the Ministry of Agriculture that said tractors will benefit the farming communities across the country. In the same vein, we wish to express disappointment and disquiet that the Secretary to the Commission would make unwarranted insinuations that the Honorable Secretary General and Head of the Civil Service is in cohort with the lead counsel of the Commission to interfere in the proceedings of the Commission. Thus, the Secretary to the Commission is hereby urged to immediately retract such gratuitous allegations to avoid undesirable consequences. We kindly solicit your understanding and cooperation.
All right, let's look at these three correspondences together. What can be deduced from these three, what I can deduce from these three correspondences is that Cabinet wanted an outcome. It approached the Commission in a very clandestine manner, in my view, and it got what it wanted. Would you comment on that?
What I deduce from these three letters is that the first letter from the office of the president was ill-advised. The chairman of the commission swiftly rejected that. And the third letter confirms two fundamental facts that I have provided to this committee. First is that I had advised for a request to the commission to suspend the sale of the tractors. And this letter here makes reference to craving the indulgence of the commission. That to me is a request.
You see, that is after the fact. The
Well,
third letter was after the fact.
Yeah, but I said the first letter was still advice. I agree with you. I'm telling you what I testified to and what confirms that testimony here in this third letter of 3rd July.
I will do you one better. Perhaps when they decided to heed to your advice is when they decided to put you in the picture, and that's why you're only in the picture on the third
of July.
Correspondence.
That
yes.
may well be the case, but my position was that a request should be made rather than an instruction, and you can see that craving the indulgence of the commission is a request, one. And two, it was based on concerns or the request of the Minister of Agriculture, who said he wanted the tractors to be
yes, that has been established.
So
and
this is what I would deduce from these 3 letters.
Okay. I explained to you my deduction. I would deduce so because, one, even though I agree with you, discussions in cabinet, especially the ideas of the agriculture minister, they were very noble. In fact, if I was in cabinet that day, if God had blessed me to be in cabinet that day, I would commend him for that idea. The approach, however, I would frown upon. Because here we are talking about an independent body, how to approach that independent body. And we have a ministry, the government has a law chambers headed by your humble self at the time. I mean, it's not rocket science to know that the only way to approach the commission in this type of thing would be to approach it formally. And that would mean to approach it in its proceedings, because it's deliberating on these assets. These assets are being deliberated upon, and if you wanted a hold on a process that an order was made for, you need to defer that order. And that order could have been deferred by the Ministry of Justice making an application on behalf of the government to the commission and being heard by the commission. Now that, to me, to my mind, would have been the transparent and appropriate way to approach the commission. However, what the government decided was that they would approach the commission on an administrative basis, on the sidelines, and not even through the records, because we are not in receipt of any letter conveyed by any department of the government, except for these instructions, asking for a request for the processes to be halted. Instead, what evidence we received is that the Minister of Justice was asked, yourself, you were asked to approach the commissioners and explain to them the government's position.
Maybe the fact that I did not suggest my reluctance to interfere in the work of the commission, maybe the fact that no formal application was made in this matter shows a reluctance. I am not saying more. That's all I am saying. But Council, the communications from the Office of the President, when you say clandestine, it is a little bit too harsh, because it's not a confidential communications. It's not even a strictly confidential communications. When governments communicate in a manner that they don't want, in a manner that they want to maintain confidentiality, they label it as such, confidential or strictly confidential. The fact that this was an open letter, I don't think it was meant to clandestinely approach the commission.
I was not, well, okay, proceed.
Because you used the word clandestinely. So I don't think it was clandestinely done. Sometimes some of these things are done innocently.
What I was referring to, what was clandestine, was an instruction by cabinet to you to speak
I don't recall cabinet instructing me to speak with
But that's the evidence we have. And you would agree with me, if that was the case, that would be a clandestine approach.
No, it wouldn't be a clandestine approach. It would be asking the Attorney General to use his good offices to request for a deferral of the sale of the tractors.
Yes,
that
but there's a
mean it's
mechanism
clandestine.
in which to approach
Yes, and that's why
the commission. And speaking to the commissioners would not be appropriate.
You need to work in the real world sometimes, I think, for you to understand how things really work out there. It's not as ideal as you...
Apparently the National Assembly is a cartoon.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to interact in the real world. Sometimes some of these things do occur in professional environments. You have a discussion before something is put in writing. If it is going to be, if there are chances of success. If not, then you don't bother at all, because it's all part of streamlining processes. And so it would not have been out of the ordinary for me to reach out to the commission chairman and ask if that was a request that they would be willing to accommodate before I actually subject myself to a written request. That would be very, very normal. And it would be very normal for the chairman to say, I am open to the idea, okay, send in your request, or I don't think we can do this, and then I would not send in my request. So
in that context, Mr. Tambedou, I agree with you.
Exactly. So that would not be clandestine.
But that
right?
was not that is not the context.
No, but you're telling me that cabinet had asked me to reach out.
Yes.
And you described us as clandestine. And I'm saying it's not necessarily clandestine, because I could have approached the commission and asked for an indication as to whether they're open to the idea.
So let me put to you what is on record before the committee. In fact, perhaps we will just halt on this issue and move to something, a side issue that will advise this issue. Cabinet asked the Minister of Justice to approach the commissioners and get back to Cabinet. The Minister approached the commissioners yourself. From the evidence we have, that you approached the commissioners and you came back to Cabinet. But funny enough, it was not the whole Cabinet that you came to. You had a meeting with His Excellency the President, the Secretary General, on the same day that Mr. Kurang and Mr. Sise met. Do you recall that meeting?
No, I don't. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but I don't recall it right now.
So you would not recall the conversations that happened in that meeting?
Maybe if you continue, my memory would be refreshed.
Unfortunately for us, you are the first witness from that quorum to be before this this committee. We have not had the pleasure of calling the Secretary General at the time, Mr. Habib Jammeh, just yet.
And what would I have said in that meeting?
And we have also not had the pleasure of having His Excellency the President sitting on that seat yet. But I don't know what you would have said. But whatever you said did not go down well with His Excellency and Mr. Jammeh, the Secretary General at the time. This is on the account given to the committee by Mr. Sise.
Okay.
And immediately that meeting was concluded, Mr. Sise had another meeting with his subordinate. Sorry, Mr. Jammeh had another meeting with his subordinate, Mr. Sise, the Secretary General and the Secretary to Cabinet, respectively. And in that meeting, he instructed Mr. Sise to call Mr. Kurang. And in fact, he called Mr. Kurang for Mr. Sise on his own device and handed it to Mr. Sise to speak. Yes. So we are not aware of the content of the meeting. You are the first to appear here. We would like to be enlightened on what occurred in that meeting.
And you're saying that based on the evidence before this committee, whatever I had communicated in that meeting did not go down well with the other participants of the meeting?
Yes, well, this is deduced from the events immediately following.
I cannot recall that meeting. I cannot even recall if I ever approached the commission to ask them about the sale of the tractors. I do not recall that. And even if I were to do that, I would have been more tempted to do that with lead counsel to find out whether that was a possibility before I would actually approach the commission. But I do not recall those sequence of events.
Okay. But the sales went on to be suspended.
I certainly recall that for a brief moment, the sales were suspended.
Yes, and they were suspended to accommodate the government.
Well, it made sense for the commission to hold on to see what the government was proposing, what the government wanted, to hear what the government wanted before they could decide as to whether to proceed with the sale or not. So I think it was out of deference to the government that the commission would do that. The government is the government.
Was that right, in your view?
Was what right?
The
temporary suspension of the sales?
And the way that the government approached the commission.
Yeah, but we have already established the fact that the letter was ill-advised. That was not the proper approach.
So it was wrong?
It was ill-advised. Let me put it that way, Council.
Okay.
We're dealing with government, senior government officials here, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, out of respect for the offices that they hold.
Yes.
But it was ill-advised. Nevertheless, I think they have realized that, and their subsequent communication on the 3rd of July reiterates the fact that it was going to be a request to the commission.
It did not reiterate it. It in fact stated it for the first time.
Okay, all right. So they have taken a step back from their original position and adopted a new one.
After the fact. After that, their instructions were heeded.
I agree. It was ill-advised. I think we agree on that.
Yes, if we agree, let's agree wholehearted. They
But-
messed up. They messed up.
No,
let's not try and proffer explanation.
No, let's
say-
give the government credit. The letter of the 3rd of July did indicate that they were making a request to the commission.
after the fact.
Yes, better late than never.
Okay. All right. Let me fixate on that letter.
Okay.
The middle paragraph of that letter. It's where they express that their disappointment and disquiet,
Yes.
and also urge. You see, urge again, once more, the secretary to proffer an apology or retract his statements.
Yes. It was an urging, urging in my understanding of English is not to demand or to instruct, it's to emphatically request. That's what I would say urging is.
And I'm happy that you put a modifier on the nature of the request.
Yes, because when you
Because I was just about to reach for my dictionary, but it's fine. I'm happy that you qualified the nature of the request. It's not an ordinary request.
that's why I said it's an emphatic request. That's in my understanding of the word urging.
You see, I want to make a point. I don't know how to make it without extending it to the Evidence Act. You see, in the Evidence Act, there's a provision there for confessions and how confessions should be administered. And even if the procedure wasn't followed and the police officer is super nice, he's so nice to the accused person, and the accused person spills the beans, that confession is not taken. You know why? Because it comes from somebody who has a fiduciary responsibility, somebody who has authority. You see, if my boss, the clerk of the National Assembly, were to tell me that, I think you should not park your car where you normally park it, because I like that spot. He's not instructing, but he is a man of authority. If I also like that parking spot more than him and decide to defy his humble request because he likes that parking spot, I should definitely keep on the back of my mind that there will be repercussions. It is natural. Don't you think so? Now, don't you think so?
So in other words, what you're saying is this was an interference by the government in the commission's work.
Yes.
I respectfully disagree. I disagree for two principal reasons. One, at most it was an attempt to interfere, at most, if we go by the first letter, which was written on the 26th of June. So it was an attempt at the most. That's how I'll qualify it, because the interference did not succeed. The chairman swiftly rejected it. So for me, it's an attempt to interfere. And two, in any event, having realized that they were attempting to interfere, which was swiftly rejected, the letter of 3rd of July really showed that they readjusted their position and now made a request. So I wouldn't call that an interference.
All right. So we're still going back to the top paragraph because you have not answered the question as it relates to the bottom paragraph. But just to react to what you just said, the government did not readjust their request. Their instructions were heeded to. This was not a request. The deed had been done. And in fact, the deed had been done for about 5 days before the government reacted. The sale was stopped for about 5-6 days. The government, out of courtesy to respond to the chair, perhaps just wrote to him to say, okay, yes,
But
you have leeway.
What the evidence is showing here, at least from what I can see, the chair in his letter of 27th of June swiftly rejected the attempted interference. So what you have
the
on
chair
record,
put light to the attempted, shed light on the attempted interference and said they cannot influence the commission.
yes.
However,
Quite
the chair
right.
also said that their request chimed with his thinking.
Yes.
Let's not beat around the bush here.
Yeah, but
This
Counsel,
is
I'll give you more.
Sure. Go on.
I'll give you more, because I have said that. I have said from my recollection, the commission halted the sales for a period. I couldn't recall. Now you're telling me it was 5 days. For a period, so that they will give the government the opportunity.
I did not say that they
Oh,
halted
okay.
for 5 days.
Okay,
I
maybe
said
I missed
they
that.
halted for 5 days. Sorry, the last letter, which is folio 44, that you make reference, you reacted to say that they changed their position,
They
adjusted their
their
position.
position. Yes.
I'm saying that they did not adjust any position, because what they set out to achieve had been achieved 5 or 6 days prior to this letter being issued. So it was not a shift in position.
Well, at least on paper, it was a shift in the government's position. The first letter, the language of the first letter is completely different from the language of the second letter. So for me, that's an adjustment of position. But in any event, like I said, as far as I knew, the commission did defer the sales temporarily to accommodate the government's request, to see what the government was coming up with. And when the government failed to reach out to the commission again in a timely manner, the commission proceeded. The government was certainly an interested party in the commission's proceedings.
Okay. I believe more or less we are on the same page as to the interference. Now I want to go on to the interference with the tractor sales.
Yes.
Now I want to move on to.
But the interference did not succeed.
I believe it succeeded. The
Okay.
committee believes it succeeded.
But the
Because-
tractors were ultimately sold, notwithstanding the government's request.
And that is not thanks to the,
It is the commission's decision.
it was the decision by the commission was to halt tractor sales
And to sell them
However-
subsequently.
in other regions. However, the secretary did not heed to the instructions proffered to him by the Secretary General,
Quite widely.
and he continued sales that day. So
Until-
that day,
Yes.
sales concluded.
Quite widely until
Yes.
the commission tells him to stop.
Indeed.
I agree with that.
Indeed. So I wouldn't say that the interference did not succeed. There was interference.
It did not succeed because the secretary did not stop, according to the evidence you're just telling me now, and that's actually correct. So there was that's why I kept using the word attempt. Interference suggests that actually it did have the desired result.
It did, Mr. Tambedou, because what the desired result was for the Ministry of Agriculture to retain a certain number of tractors.
But did they?
The Ministry of Agriculture retained a certain number of tractors.
For the farming communities,
Yes,
I think the commission was very considerate to consider that.
I also think so too.
Yeah.
However, I think the interference succeeded on that basis.
Okay, I will give you that if that's what you want to insist on. Are there other examples of interference by the government?
Perhaps I should ask you that question.
As far as the MOJ is concerned, there's never been any. I can only speak for the MOJ. I can only speak for the MOJ. And as far as the MOJ was concerned, there was never any attempt.
On the contrary, I believe you are the spokesman for the government.
You're giving me a lot of titles, eh?
But you were the line ministry. So you were the spokesperson for the government to the commission.
And that's why we did not seek to interfere in the working of the commission, because we understood what that meant.
Okay. Now, the middle paragraph again.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would not even categorize it as interference, so to speak. I would categorize it as a threat. Would you?
The language was ill-advised.
There's a lot of ill advice in the government at the time.
I am not in control of government or who writes government letters. I can only profile my views in a way that would not disrespect anybody or any office.
All right, just for the record, I was scrambling to look for a piece of evidence, but the sales had halted around that period, July 2018, and continued months later in October 2018.
Yeah. I suspected it was a couple of weeks before the commission resumed, because they had waited to hear
That's-
back from the government
A couple of months.
for a while, yes, and nothing happened, so they proceeded. Yeah.
Oh, to just sign it.
Well, they did rainy season. Can you temporarily suspend the sales until we've had an opportunity to put a case to you? Why wouldn't the commission
Because that
accommodate
is not the appropriate manner in which to approach the commission. The appropriate manner to approach the commission would be in public hearings. We have an application to make. We wish for you to freeze, to put an injunction on, or a stop to the sales momentarily, as the government is heavily interested in it. And nobody blames the government to be heavily invested in the assets. But the manner in which the government approached the commission, again, for me, was clandestine. It was not the appropriate, it was not the best way. In fact, it was not the right way to approach the commission.
I keep saying you're brave. It's not the right way. Based on what? Based on what rule of law or of practice?
This is a commission of inquiry,
That's right.
right?
Yes.
The commission of inquiry conducts public hearings, except for where there are issues of confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
The commission of inquiry is independent.
Mm-hmm.
If it is independent, it can only be swayed by reason. Correct?
Absolutely.
And The forum for that reason can only be the public hearing. It cannot be administrative, because if it is administrative, then the component of interference comes into play.
So you're saying you cannot make a reasoned request to the commission through a letter?
I'm saying you should not
Based
make a
on what?
reason
Based on what rule of law or of practice, counsel?
based on
Based
the
on-
inherent nature.
Based on your own views?
No, not based on my own views.
But
Based
based on
on the inherent nature of a commission of inquiry.
But that's your
If,
view.
if you were not the government, if you were a third party and you wish to approach the commission, how would you approach the commission? As other third parties did.
Some have approached the commission through letters. Others have used counsel to write letters. Others have made applications, formal applications. So there are different ways to approach the commission. So some wrote directly, some wrote through counsel, some made formal applications.
And those that had issues to deal with the substantive subject matter of the commission, let's say an asset or two is affected, how did they approach the commission?
Some of the ones that I knew didn't even approach the commission. They went straight to court. Then they were referred back to the commission as a first step. Yeah.
You see, the court understood my position. But apparently you don't think you think my position is
No, I'm not saying
my position.
No,
the court understood that
I'm not saying
there
that.
is a process, a transparent process going on.
Okay.
Anyway,
That's a matter of procedure.
it indeed is. But you see, procedure is informed by substance. And where the procedure is flawed, you risk offending the substance.
You have a lot of. You must have done well in your philosophy class in law.
In fact, I teach constitutional law, correct, and administrative.
I could sense the
And
I could sense the pedagogy in.
And I enjoy it.
I can see that.
Yes.
I can see you do.
But back to the threat in paragraph 2. Do you agree with me, or do you maintain that it's ill-advised still?
It is ill-advised.
All right.
The language is ill-advised, or was ill-advised.
And that ill-advised metamorphosed into reality 7 days later.
No, but you can understand the reason behind this language at the time. I suspect very strongly, I'm not very sure about the chronology of events, but I'm sure this was in reaction to Alaji Mamadi Kuran's letter of complaint about this council. Was it?
Yes, the second paragraph?
Yes, the second paragraph.
The second paragraph was, but again,
but we're talking about the second paragraph now, right?
Yes, we are.
And that's why I'm saying I can understand the language. I agree it's ill-advised. If it was ill-advised, I wouldn't have used language like this. But I can also understand the reasoning for this reaction at the time.
Okay. And why is that?
A lot of wild allegations were made at the time which were not substantiated.
Okay. From the evidence we received, the Secretary to Cabinet at the time, Mr. Ibrahim Assise, had mentioned that the basis upon which Mr. Kurang was let go by the government, or rather removed from his position as Secretary by the government, was because of that heated interaction at the MSA complex. Perhaps I missed to invoke that emotion, that it was not a pleasant interaction.
That's the evidence of Mr. Ibrahim Assise, Secretary to Cabinet.
As well as the evidence of Mr. Kurang.
That is not to my knowledge. I have a different reason as to why Mr. Mamadi Kurang was
Yes,
removed.
you hinted to it earlier on in the proceedings, but
Yeah.
we will delve right into it now. But just to state for you the facts on record from both witnesses.
I I find that hard to believe because Mr. Kwan was not removed after those heated exchanges. Not immediately after, anyway. Mr. Kwan was only removed after I recommended for his removal.
Mr. Kurang was removed 7 days after the letter asking him to retract the statement. And I believe in the document that you are referring to, Mr. Kurang, true to himself, had shown that he was not about to apologize.
You know, I guess it's credit to me that I found very strong persons of very strong character and personality
Indeed, it is indeed credit to you.
man these critical positions. But nevertheless, when people cannot work together harmoniously, you have to make difficult decisions. That is the burden of leadership. It's not pleasant to be making tough decisions, but if you want to be an effective leader, you have to be prepared to make difficult decisions. And this was one instance where I had to make a difficult decision, and I did. It was not personal at all.
Yes, I can imagine being in that position would be quite difficult. I definitely can appreciate that. And I can appreciate the fact that it's quite convenient for me to be scrutinizing those times without the practical context.
You still have a long way in your career. I'm sure you will find yourself in situations like that sooner or later.
I'm sure I will take the Alhaji Muhammad Kurang route.
I'm saying you will find yourself in situations where you have to make difficult decisions, one way or the other.
That would be a blessing to be the Minister of Justice.
No, not minister, just any position, council.
Okay.
Difficult decisions come with responsibility.
Indeed. I am attempting to guide the committee as to which document we are referring to.
Yeah, but before you do, can you take a short break, 10 minutes? You know, we don't have a quorum. I mean, we are only 3.
I was actually going to suggest that in 3 minutes. 5 on the dot.
That's
I see. My apologies. Yeah.
We can resume again.
Oh, that's fine.
That's fine.